It was a dark and stormy night. The wind howled through the trees, and the rain pounded against the windows. Sarah sat at her desk, trying to focus on her work. She had a deadline to meet, and she couldn't afford to be distracted. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It was as if the house itself was trying to tell her something. She tried to brush it off as just her imagination, but the longer she sat there, the more she became convinced that there was something wrong. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. She pushed away from her desk and stood up, determined to get to the bottom of whatever was going on. She cautiously made her way through the dark hallway, her heart racing in her chest. As she approached the living room, she heard a strange noise. It sounded like a faint whisper, just on the edge of her hearing. She froze, her heart pounding in her ears. "Is someone there?" she called out, her voice shaking. There was no answer, but the whispering continued. Sarah's fear turned to anger as she stormed into the living room, determined to confront whatever was causing the noise. But as she entered the room, she was greeted by an empty space. There was no one there, and the whispering had stopped. Sarah let out a sigh of relief, telling herself that it was just her imagination. But as she turned to leave the room, she felt a cold hand grasp her shoulder. She spun around, but there was still no one there. She could feel the presence of something, though. It was like a weight on her shoulder, heavy and oppressive. She could feel its breath on the back of her neck. She tried to run, but her feet seemed rooted to the spot. She was trapped, unable to move as the presence closed in on her. She closed her eyes, bracing herself for the worst. But instead of the attack she expected, she felt a sudden release. The weight on her shoulder lifted, and the breath on the back of her neck disappeared. She opened her eyes, expecting to see the room empty once again. But instead, she saw a figure standing in front of her. It was tall and thin, with long, stringy hair and a gaunt face. Its eyes were black pits, and its mouth was twisted into a grotesque smile. Sarah's blood ran cold as she realized that this was no ordinary figure. It was a ghost, a specter of the past that had somehow found its way into her present. She tried to run, but the ghost was too fast. It reached out and grabbed her, its icy touch sending shivers down her spine. "Why are you doing this to me?" Sarah cried out, tears streaming down her face. The ghost just laughed, its voice a rasping whisper. "I have a message for you," it said. "A warning of things to come. You must leave this place, or suffer the same fate as I did." Sarah couldn't believe what she was hearing. How could this ghost know about her future? And how could she possibly leave this place, her home, her sanctuary? But as she looked into the ghost's empty eyes, she knew that it was telling the truth. She had to leave, no matter how hard it would be. She packed her bags that night, and left the house behind. She never looked back, and she never spoke of the ghost again. But she knew that it would always be with her, a reminder of the horrors.